All right, welcome back to the morning meeting. I want to take a moment to explain a phrase that I've been using throughout the week. I started it actually on Sunday night on the radio. It's corporate communism, and I've been using it in two very specific instances. First, with health insurers who use the government to protect themselves from real competition. We're all watching this play out in front of us. You probably know this. If you don't, they are the only American business, along with Major League Baseball, of course, that's completely exempt from the Sherman Antitrust Act. They also have major lobbies in Washington preventing any form of choice. We saw what happened to Senator Wyden's efforts to create choice for everybody on the exchanges. Just natural competition. Forget the public option. No. And then there's the banking industry, the beneficiaries of an ongoing $24 trillion taxpayer-funded bailout that supports the entire system. $24 trillion. Not that we may not get some of that money back. We may get a lot of it back. But that is national capital that is being sucked into a broken banking system at the expense of the rest of our country. They continue to use too big to fail as blackmail to the taxpayer in order to get them or us to provide them with our tax money. My phrase corporate communism, I know, makes some people uncomfortable. Some argue it's just an easy insult, but let's be very clear. I use it with very specific meaning. It is a system that takes resources from the citizenry and redistributes it to a tiny elite. I use the phrase corporate communism because I cannot find an other way to more accurately convey what is happening in our nation today. That a handful of weak, uncompetitive, outdated companies and industries are purchasing control of the American political system in order to stay in business using their cronyism. It is coming at the direct expense of the rest of us in this nation and is a total betrayal of everything that represents America. Let's bring in Mark Ames, editor of ExiledOnline.com. His latest column, America's Dead Souls, 8 Reasons to Hate Our Billionaire Bolsheviks. Mark, particularly interesting because you spent, 10 years in Russia, 8 years in Russia, watching their economic system make its transition. Very briefly, because we have a lot of ground to cover, why is communism as an economic model, meaning a model where there is no competition, there is no choice, laziness and weakness is rewarded through, again, either the use of character assassination or intellectual property theft, whatever it may be, to reward yourself at the expense. Why is that a problem?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have an economy that creates things that nobody wants or needs, but the economy sucks, all of the resources out for these things nobody needs. For example, Volga cars. They're still being produced even today, which chokes off any innovation in the rest of the Russian economy. So now they have to import everything. That's the problem here. I mean, to paraphrase Orwell, what we're getting here is all men are created equal, but a handful of men are created $24 trillion more equal than the rest of us. And the problem is it's going to turn this country into a second-rate country. And unless we get back to our values again, we're going to turn into something more like what Russia saw, which is this kind of small handful of billionaires and oligarchs and an elite sucking off and parasiting off the rest of the country, and just soaking it for all it's worth and looking for all it's worth.
You wrote about a couple of the most notable parasites. United Healthcare CEO Bill McGuire bonused him. They say healthcare is not profitable, not for some people, but certainly for Bill. Maybe not for shareholders sometimes. But Bill made $125 million as a bonus. Sounds like a lot of money, except for the fact that he also bonused himself more than $1 billion personally running a health insurance company in stock options.
Yeah, on the one hand, you have 45,000 Americans dying a year from lack of health insurance, and on the other hand, you have this guy, on top of it, he backdated his stock options.
Which basically means rigging the stock options so that they're guaranteed to be worth money.
That's what the whole basis of corporate communism is, though, right? Is rigging the system so that you always win, you always take everything for yourself, and there's never enough for the rest of the people, and there's never enough, frankly, for the rest of the economy. I mean, I would think that the whole American economy is not health insurance and the finance industry. There are a lot of other parts that are actually much more productive and innovative.
And are forced to compete tooth and nail to survive from one day to the next.
Yeah, well, the problem is I don't think, for example, Silicon Valley, I don't think they're quite as, they don't have their tentacles in the government in Washington, quite as deeply and on such just a dark, horrible level, manipulative level as the finance industry and health industry. So they're getting choked off. And we may not have the world's best high-tech industry in 5 or 10 years because there's not going to be any resources for it.
And there's no capital. You talk to venture capitalists, there's not money to invest. All these things are happening as we watch this happen.
There's a finite amount of money in any economy.
Yeah. All right. Well, unless you can print lots of it. Well, I've noticed a recurring theme here at the morning meeting, and it goes back, in fact, to when I first saw our government give all of our taxpayer money to our financial institutions and never exacted a single term. In fact, never even expressed a real ability to reform the system that stole all the money. Systems that are broken, outdated, and simply out of order. Those that facilitate the very corporate communism we rail against here on this program. And we see proof of those broken or outdated systems every day. For instance, just today, or I guess it was a couple days ago here, the Obama administration okayed a $10.5 million pay package, $10 million a year for the CEO of AIG. Newly appointed pay czar. The fact that we have a pay czar as opposed to restoring risk, reward, value, compensation so that you don't have a czar deciding who makes money is already insane. Anyway, he was expected to cut executive salaries on Wall Street, but gave $10 million a year the green light at AIG, the insurance company, which is the one that sold all the credit insurance with no collateral, just stole all of our money. $250 billion in bailout money, and they're a huge beneficiary of the few trillion underneath them. Many don't think they'll ever be able to pay back that $250 billion. The Treasury Department saying that Ben Moshe, who's the CEO, that the decision was based on details of the CEO's previous compensation and pay comparisons with other leaders. Now, here's the thing. After the $180 billion in taxpayer funding, AIG is, for all intents and purposes, a government institution that is supporting our banking structure. It's a government company. We pay the President of the United States of America $400,000 a year to administrate the entire United States of America. Ken Feinberg is telling us, the Obama administration is telling us, that we cannot find a single individual, capable individual, to administrate the disaster, the fraud that is AIG on our behalf without paying them $10 million per year. I'm not saying CEOs shouldn't make a lot of money if they actually create value. But if you're administrating a vehicle for generational theft, why are we paying you $10 million to do that? Anyway, pour some more cash in the Goldman Sachs money pit while we're giving money away. A mining company that is owned by the investment powerhouse, of course, itself a government-subsidized institution for a lovely period of time and a huge beneficiary of all the subsidies for all the other banks that would otherwise fail. Well, they got an extra $3 million from the taxpayer. Representative Jerry Lewis inserted the earmark into the House Defense Appropriations Bill, calls it a security concern. Funds would go toward mining rare minerals used in military weapons. Of course, the money goes to Goldman Sachs, but the taxpayer will pay to protect the asset. We wouldn't want Goldman to have to foot the bill for a project like that, particularly as Goldman's now profitable again. It looks like they actually have record profits. We'd hate for them to have to kick $3 million in for their own assets, particularly when we delivered $60 billion to them with no terms. We reached out to Goldman. They had no comment on that one. And then finally, a new Newsweek article asking an important question: why 1 year after the financial meltdown that still has the U.S. taxpayer providing the use of $24 trillion of U.S. capital, there's been no reform whatsoever. Former federal regulator William Black, quoted in the article, notes that there were more than 1,000 convictions after the 1980s savings and loan crisis, when effectively a scam not of this scale, but a similar scam was run. In this case, we have not only no convictions, we have zero indictments since the collapse, as people sit with hundreds of millions of dollars stolen from the taxpayer, risking our money and bringing the entire system to the brink of collapse. He calls the reform proposals analytically bankrupt and unlikely to prevent a future crisis. Yes, in fact, now many of the financial institutions, let alone our government, are bigger than ever and certainly too big to fail. So what's the fix? Fix is call or write your elected officials and tell them you will not stand for this. If you need help finding your elected official, go to our website. It's dylan.msnbc.com and click on the Heed the Call link. It will help you find who your representative is, and you can send them a note and express your point of view on the use of your taxpayer money in this country. Again, dylan.msnbc.com. Click on Heed the Call.